Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door. And by God, we have done it. My last championship season review for 2020-2021. And it is Huddersfield Town. Apologies, Huddersfield fans. Sorry to keep you waiting. It kind of went, the teams that were first confirmed promoted, they did it ages before everyone else. Then the teams that were relegated and nearly missed. And then I just went down the table. And that has left us here at Huddersfield in a first season in charge for Carlos Corberan. Plenty to talk about in very much a season of two halves. One, pretty decent, and then slide off towards the end of the season. It'll probably be reasonably alarming to Huddersfield fans, but plenty of nuance to put around those two opposing season halves, let's just say. So, it was Danny Cowley out, 19th of July. Remember, the Cowleys had been sort of dropped in there, it's mid-season, wasn't it? They came maybe even closer to the start of the season. I think they started the season with Jan Sievert, didn't they, in the first season down. A bit of a struggle, and in come Danny and Nicky Cowley, and ultimately get Huddersfield to survival, basically. Remember, it was that win over West Brom that gave Leeds promotion, didn't it? Or confirmed Leeds promotion towards the end of the season. In fact, didn't Emil Smith-Rowe scoring that, who's done really well for Arsenal now? So, Cowley's was, with hindsight now, a short-term fix, because having got survival in the way that they did, and we can talk about that, they are pushed out the door. And interesting one, actually, because Cowley's were linked with all and sundry jobs, everything, weren't they? Whilst they were at Lincoln, waited out for Huddersfield, which, and we'll talk about this, was a parachute job, wasn't it? But it wasn't really, because remember the takeover that happened, the change of ownership, the parachute money essentially went to the old owner. So Huddersfield basically went into the championship with Premier League liabilities and didn't have the parachute money to actually spend. You'd rather be, honestly, you'd rather be Coventry, Wickham or Rotherham. Okay, you haven't got the money coming in, but at least you don't have those Premier League liabilities from 2 years up in the big league. So a bit of a unique case, Huddersfield. And the Cowleys weren't supposedly the answer. Carlos Corberan, who comes in, and obviously as soon as we mentioned Carlos Corberan, we mentioned Marcelo Bielsa, who was his boss at Leeds United. I don't know if they worked anywhere else together. Someone will correct me in the comments if that is or is not the case. So Corberan was a coach at Leeds, and seems a very bespoke, kind of innovative but brave appointment. Me and lots of other people, when we look back at the pre-season predictions, didn't have Huddersfield doing very well. I think the combination of coming down with the Premier League liabilities, not really having any money because of the parachutes being pushed elsewhere, essentially, a new untried manager. And as soon as you hear that name Bielsa mentioned, you assume that given Marcelo Bielsa's absolute complete obsession with his philosophy and pattern of play, that anyone that worked for him was going to attempt to do something in that mould, if you know what I mean. Going to have learned in one way, aren't they? And that was going to have been hammered home. So, yeah, it was a brave appointment, let's just say. After 2 difficult seasons, we've put a lot of thought and work into where we want to be, said Head of Football Operations Lee Bromley. Obviously, we need to return to winning games, and to be successful, we must have all areas of the club aligned in the way we work. We want to return to the quote, no limits mentality that served this club so well back in 2017. And that's difficult, isn't it? Because let's be fair, that was the lightning in a bottle season, wasn't it? Where Huddersfield managed to get into those playoffs positions, fought their way through the playoffs from 2 penalty shootouts and got themselves brilliantly and unexpectedly up into the Premier League. So the bar was set high then, and we talk about expectations at the end of the video, but certainly no limits. Too Unlimited song from the 90s, isn't it? That's the quote from Lee Bromby there, the head of football operations. Here comes a clearance in the summer, though. And I mentioned this. You just got to think about the balance sheet. They've come down probably in... It's honestly, like I said, it's the worst position you can be in, having lots of liabilities and then not having the cushion that the parachute payment gives you. You genuinely would rather be coming up from League Run rather than in that position. You've got to balance those books, and you've got to think of the long-term future of the club, because that's a big gamble to try and keep some of those wages. If you make a comparison with someone like Swansea, they didn't invest. They have had 2 playoff finishes, but it wasn't the case that the parachute money was all set aside for this ownership change, and they did have a few big sales, Roden, James, McBurney, etc. We have one very big sale here, Carl Grant to West Brom, 15 million quid, or the thick end of, as ever. Transfer marked numbers there. If you believe different, then send transfer marked a strongly worded letter with your deal memorandum proving that you know more than they do about the transfer fees. And that's not a Premier League player, is it? That's someone that was signed in the first season. So huge turnover in terms of that money raised in Carl Grant. Great deal, obviously. Young English player. We'll see him back with West Brom. And then you get some of those legacy players that they've probably made losses on, despite pulling in, the thick end of 12, 15 million quid there. Sobby, Mounier, Congolo. But I think they were bought in for a lot of money, those players, weren't they? Off they go to Egypt, to Ligue 1, and to Fulham in the Premier League. And then, look, free transfers, Stankovic, Vaughan, Brown, Coleman, Kachunga. Hadjianaj goes out to, is that Turkey? I think down there my eyesight's not the best. Danny Simpson released, Colin Quainer released. So it's a pattern we see very, very regularly with relegated clubs, that by year 2 and definitely by year 3 down, all of those contracts are invariably cleared. And yes, you have to pay the wages in the Premier League, don't you? But it's all about either writing the contracts so there's a lessening in the wages, and good luck getting footballers to sign those contracts, or clearing the decks. And we know in the Championship with the FFP stuff that it's hard to keep players on huge wages, certainly for anything over one season, isn't it? Here come the arrivals, and as you can see, barely anything spent there compared to the probably 20 million plus they got in. 630,000 we think for Pippa. It's a good signing, that. 22 years old, wing back, can play either side. And it's the recruitment's good, I have to say. Naby Sarr, who'd played the season for Charlton, Danny Ward, who'd been at Huddersfield before, and given what they've spent, and when you add in Carol Eiting on loan, Joel Pereira, he's not going to do a great deal. The promotion of Ramoni Critchlow there, and Alex Vallejo down the bottom on a free, plus Josh Karoma kind of coming through to take the Carl Grant spot. Look, if you're going to spend a pittance, then that's a fair few players that played quite a lot of games this season. You've got to be innovative. Went for the Spanish market, went for the loan market with Ajax, obviously, for Eiting. So, yeah, I don't really know what else they could have done given the sort of financial constraints in the amount actually invested. There's the first half of the season, and it's very good. Huddersfield in 12th place at year end at game number 22, and a lot of people, me included, are sitting there going, okay, well done. If they finish anywhere near the top half, that's a great start by Carlos Corber. And remember, football supporters and football hierarchies always look at a league position. They don't look down, do they? They then think, oh, okay, what's the next steps? Top 10 then, isn't it? So a really, really good start. Look at some of the results in there as well. 10 points in 4 against Forest, Rotherham. A win at Swansea, look. Did double Swansea in the end? I can't remember. And against Derby, big win over at Millwall. Look, there's some chasings, isn't there? There's 3 conceded against Brentford and 4 conceded against Stoke, and then a 3-2 win, a 3-0 defeat at Cardiff, a little bit up and down, 5-0 defeat at Bournemouth. But enough wins in there, 9 in those first 22 games, only 9 defeats as well, 31 points from 22. If you'd have doubled that up, you're over the 60-point mark, and we'll look at the final table and see where that would have been. But you can already see with some of the results that it's open, it's attacking, it's brave. They're playing out from the back with maybe not necessarily the quality of player that other teams, and we're talking Norwich and Brentford and Bournemouth and teams with perhaps better players doing a similar thing. So it is brave. It was open. There was the odd hiding. But when it clicked and when they came against teams who were going to let them have the ball and maybe didn't have the quality to pick them off, then you win some games. Obviously, try it against Bournemouth, 5-0 defeat. We know it's going to be an even bigger defeat later in the season than a 5-0. And then you pick out like a result against the Cardiff where they'll just sit there and they'll kill you when you're too open, won't they? Without necessarily being as free-flowing as some of the other teams there. But big picture, first half of the season, very good. Iain, Koroma as well, Toffolo playing well. However, and we had to do this for the Bristol City video, Huddersfield just did not have the depth to cope with injuries, did they? And yes, a lot of info on that page. Look, Chris Schindler is not on the pitch from game number 17 onwards. Stearman has a big period out in the middle third of the season. Edmonds Green, start of the season, he has 2 periods out. Elphick doesn't kick a ball, does he? And those really big, important ones, you can see Vallejo, takes them a while to get him in the team. Carroll, Iain and Josh Koroma, that's the big one. You can see Iain about halfway down, misses from round 24 all the way up to the last sort of 4 games. I didn't think we'd see him back as well. And then look, Josh Koroma, brutal. He was such a key player there. And from about game 18 through to the last 3 or 4 games of the season, Danny Ward, they can't get fit either. So, look, everyone had injuries in COVID. Some teams more than others. Huddersfield, particularly when you see who got injured. Did Toffolo? I do remember Toffolo. Where is he? So last sort of half of the season, basically no Toffolo, who balanced out Pippa. And I think when you look at that team, you needed Toffolo and Pippa for the whole season. You needed Koroma and Iain for the whole season, and maybe they could have maintained where they were in the first half. So injuries did play a part. Look, let's be very fair about this. I cover all 24 teams. Fans tend to think they're always the most hard done by injuries. Everybody gets injuries. Do you get them to key players or not? I don't want to get into a conversation, a boo-hoo about who was most hard done by, because everyone gets them. You've got to get it on. You've got to get on with it. Got to get it on. Sound like Marvin Gaye or something. You've got to get on with it, haven't you? And I think injuries did hurt Huddersfield there, didn't they? Particularly in this second half of the season. Here are some January tweaks. And again, look, we don't know what the undisclosed fees are for Sorba Thomas. Richard Keogh makes a return to the Championship. Some experience in there. Dwayne Holmes, he was at Huddersfield before. He's only 26. He moves back. Rolando Aarons, he's been in the Championship before. Sheffield Wednesday was he on loan. Danny Grant, Jason Lutweiler, all on free transfers as well. And then Yaya Sanogo, Umar Niase, Scott High promoted as well. So let's be very, very plain about this. Corberon's had to do this with very, very little money. We know Pippa was a fee, and, you know, again, I'll say my usual, show me your evidence and tell me what the fees are for Thomas, Keogh and Holmes. I don't expect the whole thing amounted to probably more than Sobby, the winger, was sold for. Certainly nowhere near what Carlin Grant was sold for sure. Diakabi goes out. That was expensive, wasn't it, as well? Hamer out to go and cover over at Swansea as well. So he's building Corberon. Young players coming in, innovative recruitment, Spanish market, Boreham Wood, Keogh for some experience. So that's his second window. I think he needs to be judged probably after 4 windows. And you can imagine, how much is he going to have spent, Corberon, after 4 windows? I bet we'll be able to find one signing by one of the parachute teams when they come down that will blitz that entire 4 windows worth of work. But that's the world we live in Championship finance. The haves and the have-nots. And Huddersfield, with that takeover, are basically in the have-nots camp, aren't they, as well? One other, you call that a January tweak? I don't think you do. That's much bigger. Look at that. 24th of December. New contracts until 2024. I don't know how long they'd signed for initially. Maybe it was only a year with a half a season probation. Obviously, they re-sign halfway up the league, don't they? So all his team there as well, Corberon, sign up to the end of 2024. So if you think that's in 2020, 3.5 years, that's as long as you get, isn't it, for management deals nowadays? Will they see it out? Who knows? Probably the longest serving manager in the entire Football League if they do. That's no judgment on Huddersfield Corberon. That's a judgment on how long managers stay in jobs in 2021. But they've gone all in there, haven't they? They've liked what they've seen in the first half of the season. And Corberon gets the deal. But it's not a very good second half of the season, is it? And Huddersfield really, really tail off badly. Look down the bottom there. That is the table for the last 24 games. I know you can see Rotherham played 26, Wednesday 23, etc. But Huddersfield very, very clearly down at the bottom there. And we can say this, we like to say numbers in a certain way, nobody scored fewer points than Huddersfield in those last 24 games of the season. So it was very comprehensively relegation form. 3 wins in 24, 41 goals conceded. You can see there, to start the year, it's a run of 8 games without a win. 2 points in 8 games. Horrible as well. You get that strange win against Swansea where they actually win 4-1. Then another run, 2 points in 4 games. So you're looking at that 0.5 points per game, which is horrible. Spliced in with 3 wins, basically. A good win at QPR, keep the Wolves from the door. A good win at Forest as well. Probably just enough when you saw how Derby County were tanking towards the end of the season and Rotherham just couldn't win. Could they? Coventry and Birmingham sort of zoomed past them. And, of course, that real chasing at Norwich, 7-0. A 5-2 in there. A 3-0 at Preston. They happened, those results, didn't they, for Huddersfield during this season? Yes, we can say Karoma, Eiting weren't around, Toffolo for part of it as well. Some of those key players. But they stuck to the strategy, didn't they? It was still playing through the thirds. They weren't sitting there in a low block trying not to get relegated, which I think is the Huddersfield's perception of what the Cowleys did, and the Cowleys had Carl and Grant as well, pretty much for a whole season. So, it wasn't a pleasant second half of the season at all. I just think enough of that good work done prior to New Year, and the fact that Derby just didn't score any points and Rotherham for that last period meant that there was no real high tide, and that will be borne out when we look at the final table. And you can see, we normally say 45 to survive. You're looking at, if you don't get a point per game in the Championship, you'll be lucky to survive. So Derby managed to survive with 44 points there. Huddersfield, 49 in the end. So they were above the point per game. 71 goals conceded, however, is standout. It's the worst in the division. Obviously, that 7 and the 2 5s doesn't help, does it? But, and ifs, buts and maybes, last season I think Charlton went down with 49, didn't they? So if there had been a high tide, Huddersfield would have got swamped by it. That would have meant, however, sort of Rotherham and Derby both doing what Coventry and Birmingham did and having a surge towards the end of the season. Remember the previous season, that happened with the likes of Luton just pushing away. Wigan nearly just still took a load of points out of the middle of the table, didn't they? So didn't happen this season. Huddersfield in 20th place. It is a regression. We'll look at that. They survive, and have they bottomed out now, and can they build going forward? That will be the question. Here's the summary. So new direction, new manager. I think it was brave, wasn't it? Because they could have kept the Cowleys in there, and they could have been, what's the word? I don't want to insult the Cowleys' style of football. Functional, abrasive, and would they have finished higher than 20th? Maybe. What was the upside, though, given the spend of what the Cowleys would have been able to do? Because they did have money at Lincoln, didn't they, in relative terms in the leagues that they were in. So it was brave. More book balancing needed to happen. We saw Grant, who were they? Mounier, Sobby. There was another one for 4 million. Hadajinaj was probably a couple of million as well. So more book balancing, more the crimes of the past. Crimes, but look, you got to spend, haven't you, in the Premier League? The liabilities cut down of the past. First half of the season, brilliant, 12th place, but then injuries, lack of depth, injuries to key players as well, Iain, Karoma, Toffolo. Second half of the season, 23rd, but again, I can say, as a fact, nobody scored fewer points than Huddersfield in the last 24 games of the season. So, it is a trend downwards. Premier League 16th, then Premier League 20th, then Championship 18th, then Championship 20th. So, if you're a Huddersfield fan sitting there, the glass half full scenario is that this is the bottom out point. The liabilities are all gone. The balance sheet is clear. The ownership has changed. You've got a manager in year 2. You've got players who can now improve. And then that argument is, do you then trend up? Can the pattern of play in year 2 and year 3 carry you a little bit further once that's learned, and the muscle memory for the players that have been there throughout Corberon's tenure? And you hope then you start to climb up the league. And let's be fair, there's half a season of evidence of a 12th place team. So, you know, the capability is there. If this is the bottom of the it's not a bell curve, is it? A reverse bell curve, basically. If this is the bottom of it, and do you now start climbing out? That's the good scenario. The bad scenario is this is not the bottom of the trough or the you know, the graph, whatever you want to call it, and you're asking now for Corberon to pull out another Pippa signing, another Naby Sarr that are going to be good enough, maybe a couple of loans that are going to be good enough to keep things moving forward. So that recruitment really has to be on point. In terms of saleable assets, there are young players in there, aren't they? Critchlow Noble, Edmonds Green, Karoma himself, who we've talked about a lot, that people might be interested. Toffolo, Pippa as well. Pippa, good age. So maybe there is an argument there that you could sell and then reinvest. But it's going to be year 3 parachute money. There's going to be some of that to spend. I think it's still 15 million quid comes in. And look, that's good FFP money as well in terms of keeping the wolf from the door. In terms of the old £13 million loss ruling. So let's see what comes from Huddersfield. I think, honestly, and I don't mean to be patronising here, given new ownership, new regime, balancing the books, I think anything above position 22 was going to be a good start for Corberon, and then context is king. Can you then ride it out? It's just a bit of a shame, isn't it? Because I do feel we could be sat here now if Aiting had played 40 games, Koroma had played 40 games, Toffolo and Pippa had balanced and stayed all season. I think we could be talking in the same glowing terms we were talking about, say, Luton, who did manage to finish halfway up. Maybe not a Barnsley who got into the playoffs, but so the upside is there. You tell me, is your glass half full, half empty? I think, although it's not a resounding thumb up, I think it's got to be it's not a thumbs in the middle. It's got to be a kind of a thumbs up for Corberon this season, provided he can now trend upwards. And this is the bottom of the trough, the reverse bell curve for Huddersfield. There we go. That is my Huddersfield season review. I've had my say. Now you have yours down in the comments. Really eager to hear from Huddersfield fans of any team, really. We've done now many of these, and the comments I always reference in these is the people that say, "Oh, nice review, considering you're not even a fan of the team." Don't write that. Can you imagine saying that to someone? Look, I cover the entire league, and if you are a fan of Huddersfield or any team, and you have either written that or feel compelled to write that, remember sometimes it's good to hear from outside the bubble, and I dare say, even though we don't love us outsiders, we don't love your clubs as much as you do, we don't know as much as you do, sometimes we're able to talk more sense than you can from inside the bubble because that emotion is not there. So take it for what it is. Sometimes perception is reality, and how I'm perceiving it from the outside might be how the wider footballing world, rightly or wrongly, perceives your club. So please feel free to get your comments in. Really eager to hear from you. And I'm going to give it a celebration bump there because I set myself the target. I didn't manage to do it last season and review every single team. That is it. That is all 24 teams done. And dare I say, I did Brentford twice because I did how they got in the playoffs and then how they won the playoffs. So I'm going to break my arm in patting myself on the back and say, if you're a fan of any other club, these deep dives have been, I mean, look, they're not the clickbaity view drawing in material that some people choose to focus on YouTube. But I think for our channel, they're a vital part in me being some kind of credible voice about this league. The fact that I have gone in and done every single team, I think hopefully should mean something to you as a subscriber to say, look, We've done our work here. We've done our research in order to sit here on the internet and give an opinion. I think we can, back up our work here. So I'm very pleased to have done this. And of course, we did the dearly departed teams. We'll stick them in a lovely playlist, and I'll kind of ask for approval and praise about this on Twitter later or something. But it's not about me. It's about Huddersfield. Get your views in about Huddersfield's season. We'll see how they go next season in year 2 of Carlos Corberon. And I think I think we can say with a kind of emotional outlook, that's it for the 2020-2021 championship season. Look, I know it finished pretty much a week ago with the playoff final, but this little tale, this work I really wanted to do. And I'm very proud of the fact that here on the channel, with these great subscribers here every week with me in streams and commenting, watch-alongs, we have previewed every round. We have reviewed every round. We've reviewed every team's season. So I think we stand alone here on the channel as a really good library of championship content. And with all my soppy sayings as we come up to the half-hour mark here of me waffling. I'll stop and I'll say over now. And thank you for watching. And shall we tie a bow on the 2020-21 season? Over and out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.